Ashkenaz, Germanics, and Nordics. But before we get too deep into the video, first I want to tell you guys about my social media platforms. So I have a Clubhouse account and we can actually talk to one another on it. I also host Clubhouse rooms every now and then where I might talk about history and genetics of the Middle East and Africa. I have a Twitter page, a Facebook account, and a Facebook page, as well as a Instagram, all titled The Hebrew of Israel. And what I typically do on these platforms is post upcoming videos as well as slides for my presentations. And so just be on the lookout for all of that on my social media platforms. And if you want to support me financially for the channel, you can look at my Patreon as well as my PayPal and my GoFundMe. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin with the video. There is a long-held belief among Jews, Christians, and Muslims that Ashkenaz was the father of the Germanic and Nordic peoples. Ashkenaz in the Hebrew Bible is one of the descendants of Noah. Ashkenaz is the first son of Gomer and a Japhetic patriarch in the Table of Nations. In rabbinic literature, the kingdom of Ashkenaz was first associated with the Scythian region, then later with the Slavic territories, and from the 11th century onwards with Germany and northern Europe. In rabbinic literature, the kingdom of Ashkenaz was first associated with the Scythian region and then later with the Slavic territories, and from the 11th century onwards with northern Europe and Germany. The region of Ashkenaz was centered on the Rhineland and the Palatinate in what is now the westernmost part of Germany. And this is from Encyclopedia Judica. Ashkenaz designation of the first relatively compact area of settlement of Jews in northwest Europe, initially on the banks of the Rhine. The Babylonian Talmud, the biblical Gomer, the father of Ashkenaz, is rendered as Gomeria, although in its original context, the reference is to Germanica in northwest Syria. In addition to this incorrect identification, a possible source of explanation may be in the name Scandazia or Scandizia, the designation of Scandinavia in several sources, which was regarded as the cradle of some Germanic tribes. The association of Ashkenaz with Scandinavia is found as early as the 6th century in the Latin Endovium to the chronology of Oedipus. This is from the tug of war between genetics and archaeology. Interestingly, the medieval Jewish name for Germany is Ashkenaz, but what makes the connection even more telling is that it appears that Ashkenaz's grandson, Inguv, or great-grandson, Istvon, settled in northern Germany and then spread out from there to Denmark and the Netherlands. From there, no later than the 8th generation from Ashkenaz, Scovos, they had colonized Sweden and conquered England. The timeline for this is somewhere between 1900 through 1652 BCE. According to historian James Anderson, which fits right in the end of the Ice Age and early post-Ice Age in Northern Europe. And this is from Hellenistic Histories and the date of the Pentateuch. And it says Ashkenaz represents the Scythians who were associated with the Cimmerians in cuneiform inscriptions, where Ashkenaz appear in the form Ishkuz, as well as biblical texts. The Scythians, in origin a northern tribe like the Cimmerians, invaded and settled in Armenia and Urartu in the 7th century BCE, shortly after the Cimmerians invaded Asia Minor. And this is a book, A Short History of the Jews. Ashkenaz shows up in Genesis chapter 10, verse 3, as a descendant of Noah's son Japheth, whom Jewish tradition regards as the progenitor of the northern peoples. It was in the Ryan region that the most important communities of medieval Ashkenaz arose, especially in the three communities forming the German uh, acronym Schmuck, or Shuckum. This is from Reconstructing Ashkenaz. For Jews living in medieval Europe, Ashkenaz referred to Germany, although the only rabbinical source from late antiquity to collaborate the biblical list with current nations associates Germany with either Togarmah or Magog, Gomer's brother, rather than with Ashkenaz. And so here's just a simple Bible map that you can find online. If you just type in Ashkenaz or the descendants of Ashkenaz or Ashkenaz territory, they do basically put Ashkenaz with the Germanic peoples in the northern part of Europe, basically being the Goths and Norsemen and Saxons, Anglo-Saxons, people of those nature. So this is typically what you'll see. And if Germanic and Nordic peoples are in fact the descendants of Ashkenaz, then their Y-DNA haplogroup would be I. This is from EUpedia, haplogroup I1, Y-DNA, and it says haplogroup I1 is the most common type of haplogroup I in Northern Europe. It is found almost in Scandinavia and Finland, where it is typically represented over 35% of the Y chromosomes. Associated with the Norse ethnicity, I1 is found in all places invaded by ancient Germanic tribes and the Vikings. After the core of ancient Germanic civilization in Scandinavia, and highest frequencies of J1 are observed in other Germanic-speaking regions, such as Germany, Austria, the Lowlands, England, and the Scottish Lowlands, which all have between 10% and 20% of I1 lineages. The Germanic migrations dispersed I1 lineages to Britons, Anglo-Saxons, Belgium, Franks, Saxons, France, Franks, Visigoths, South Germany, Franks, Switzerland, Iberia, Visigoths, Vandals, Italy, Goths, Vandals, Lombards, Austria, Ostrogoths, Lombards, Ukraine, Goths, as well as around Hungary and northern Serbia. The Danish and Norwegian Vikings brought more I1 to Britain, Ireland, and Isles of Man, Normandy, Flitters, Iberia, Sicily, and the Swedish Vikings set up colonies in Russia and Ukraine and outposts as far as the Byzantine Empire, the Caucasus, and Persia. The higher frequencies of I1 in northwest Russia, east of the Baltic, hints at had a particularly strong Virginian presence, which is coordinates with the establishment of the Kievan Rus by the Swedes. And so I1, just showing you when it comes to a tree, is typically among Nordic people, I1A1, Western Germanic I1A2, and Eastern Germanic Gothic I1A3. And here's just a map showing you the distribution, haplogroup I, mostly among Northern Europeans, like in Scandinavia and Britain and places of that part of the world. So Ashkenaz is haplogroup I if Germanic and Nordic peoples descend from him. What's interesting about this is that you can see a perfect overlap if this is indeed true. See, this is the territory of Ashkenaz according to biblical scholars and maps, and then here's the distribution of haplogroup I1. So you do see a very interesting overlap. And the descendants of Ashkenaz would look like Germanic and Nordic people. So a Proto-Nordic, ancient East Nordic variety, the eastern counterpart of the Astrio-Nord, together with the early Mediterraneans, it is widespread in prehistoric Proto-Indo-European populations of the eastern steppes, Physical traits: pale to fair skin, straight or wavy, usually blonde, sometimes reddish hair with blue, green, and gray eyes. In the Nordid, depigmented, rather tall and long to medium skulled, relatively large headed group found in its highest frequencies in Northern Europe, started to develop during the Upper Paleolithic when Cro Magnon settled in Europe, reached its modern form after the influx of Indo European migrants from the east around 5000 BCE, corded wire. So that's what a Nordid is. And so here's basically where we'll end with the Ashkenaz, Germanics, and Nordics. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, click the bell, and share the video. If you have any questions, leave a comment and follow my social media accounts that I mentioned at the beginning of the video if you want to contact me. And with all of that out of the way, have a great day and shalom.